Is there proof that misnomer Black people are indeed indigenous to America? The question of whether the people commonly referred to as Black or African American are indeed indigenous to America has been a topic of significant discussion and research. Xi-Amaru Native Americans, who are a part of the Xi-Amaru Republic, indigenous government, work to reclaim and affirm their identity. They are challenging long-held narratives and utilizing their indigenous rights to properly represent themselves, not only in history, but in the present. Historical misclassification, the origins of the Black misnomer. Throughout history, many people who were indigenous to the Americas were misclassified under the labels of Black, Negro, and today, most common for those in the United States, African American. These terms were often imposed during the colonial era when European colonizers sought to categorize and control the diverse populations they encountered. In many cases, indigenous peoples who did not conform to European expectations of Native American appearance or culture were grouped into categories that erased their true identities. Evidence of indigenous roots. There is a growing body of historical and genealogical research that suggests many people who have been labeled as Black in the United States and many other countries in the Americas may in fact have indigenous ancestry. This evidence comes from oral histories, family records, and documented instances of indigenous communities being reclassified under different racial terms over the centuries. The limitations of historical narratives. The historical narrative that all Black people in the Americas are descendants of African slaves overlooks the complexity and diversity of indigenous populations. While the transatlantic slave trade did bring a number of Africans to the Americas, it is increasingly clear that not all people labeled as Black have African origins. The forced assimilation and erasure of indigenous identities played a major role in the misclassification of these communities. Reclaiming identity, the Xi-Amaru Native Americans stand, no longer allowing others to narrate their stories. The Xi-Amaru Native Americans have taken a firm stand in reclaiming their narrative. For too long, the stories and identities of indigenous peoples were dictated by outsiders, whether they were colonial powers, historians, or even modern institutions. Today, the Xi-Amaru are refusing to let others define who they are. Instead, they are asserting their indigenous identity and taking control of their representation in history, culture, and society. Utilizing indigenous rights. As indigenous people, the Xi-Amaru have inherent rights recognized under international law, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, and the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. These rights affirm their ability to self-identify, govern themselves, and protect their cultural heritage. By asserting these rights, the Xi-Amaru are actively working to correct historical misrepresentations and ensure that their true identity is recognized and respected. Action and advocacy, moving forward. Proper representation in history. The Xi-Amaru Native Americans are engaged in efforts to correct historical inaccuracies and ensure that their story is told accurately. This involves conducting research, preserving oral histories, and educating the broader public about the true origins and identity of their people. By doing so, they are working to dismantle the myths and misconceptions that have persisted for centuries. Present-day representation. Beyond historical correction, the Xi-Amaru are also focused on ensuring proper representation in the present. This includes advocating for their rights in legal, political, and cultural arenas. By establishing and developing their indigenous government, the Xi-Amaru are taking concrete steps to protect their community, uphold their rights, and ensure their voice is heard on the local, national, and international stages. Conclusion. The narrative that all people labeled as Black in America are solely descendants of African slaves is increasingly being challenged by indigenous communities like the Xi-Amaru Native Americans. As they reclaim their identity and assert their rights, the Xi-Amaru are proving that they are indeed indigenous to the Americas. By taking control of their story, they are ensuring that future generations will not only know the truth about their past, but will also be empowered to carry their heritage into the future. The Xi-Amaru's efforts serve as a powerful example of how indigenous people can use their rights to reclaim their identity and secure their rightful place in history and society. Through advocacy, education, and self-determination, they are paving the way for a more accurate and just representation of their community. For more insights into the Xi-Amaru Republic and their ongoing efforts, stay connected with our updates and resources.
Visit our website, aboriginalministryofjustice.org,